It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast. Yes, unpacking the Australian property market for you with one conversation at a time. And it's been a crazy week. Everything from the Iran conflict not even remotely close to looking like a stable ceasefire. We've had the Karl Stefanovic. He's received the biggest amount of publicity of his career. You know, regardless of what you think about the debacle, he comes out looking a lot better than the way in which probably Channel 9 has handled that. It is a Friday, so we've got the weekend to look forward to, July the 3rd. Now, Australia's property market may be showing signs of slowing, but some suburbs are continuing to move against the trend. New analysis from Rivington and Hotspotting shows 365 suburbs reached million-dollar median prices in the past year, with more expected to follow. Now, the next suburbs predicted to join the million-dollar club around the country include areas like Baringa, Loganholme, Paddington, Springfield Lakes, Belmont, Joondalup, Secret Harbour, Botanic Ridge and Brighton Le Sands. Were you in the know about any of those suburbs, or is there a suburb that is being overlooked that you would like to let us know? You can do that, of course. Our email address, myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let's go to Melbourne right now and catch up with Toby Balazs, who is the CEO from the Real Estate Institute of Victoria. Hey, welcome on to the Real Estate Breakfast. We should talk about just how many numbers that you've got there for the Institute.
Thanks very much for having me on this morning, Craig. So if you look at our office subscribers, individual members and staff subscribers, we represent about 7,000 members across the Victorian real estate sector.
You were telling me that you don't come from, per se, the real estate sector.
Not specifically on the agent side, no, but worked in real estate for over 20 years, mainly on the prop tech side of things. Worked at realestate.com.au for about 13 years and then worked at Real Estate View, which merged into View Media Group. So certainly a lot of time spent in the industry, but not specifically on the agent side.
Yeah, that's probably, in some ways, that's an advantage. I mean, some people will say it's a disadvantage, but you probably bring a fresh perspective into that role.
Look, hopefully, Craig. I mean, I love real estate. I'm passionate about the industry. You know, hopefully I understand the core ways in which the industry works and how I can advocate for our members. It's certainly a very interesting time in the Victorian property sector, and we've got plenty on our plate. So it certainly keeps me very busy, and hopefully I'm doing a good job representing the industry.
Yes, plenty on, all right, that is for sure. Now, the REIV, you guys have raised concerns that the proposed Consumer Legislation Amendment Bill, this could make property transactions more complex, increase costs and create greater litigation risks. And you also argue that changes around deposits, contracts and auction rules, they need more industry consultation before being introduced. So first off, tell us more about that concern.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. We formed our strategic working group in September last year with a view to working collaboratively with the Victorian government, legislators, regulators, and we had a fantastic group of people from right across the industry, CEOs of large groups to regional representation, buyers agents, etc., and put together our blueprint for what would make a Victorian property sector better functioning and more transparent. Unfortunately, we didn't get the engagement or the consultation that we expect, really, to be honest, of the government to make sure that when they legislate, they're bringing in rules and regulations that will assist the industry. And we're very concerned that absent of that genuine consultation, we've got a set of rules now that are due to go before Parliament that unfortunately won't improve the property sector, and the unintended consequences are going to make it unfortunately worse for both buyers, sellers across the property spectrum.
Yes, and one of the biggest issues from your organisation has been the proposal requiring Victorian sellers to disclose their auction reserve price 7 days before auction. Boy, this has had a lot of commentary around this. You say that this may not improve transparency and could lead to sellers changing their strategy, including increasing reserves, moving away from auctions possibly altogether, or negotiating privately. Is a rule designed to make auctions more transparent actually going to push more sellers away from auctions?
We believe categorically it will do that. What the government's trying to do is to improve transparency and address underquoting. We 100% support that. No dramas at all with them to put together the blueprint. The unfortunate way in which they're looking to try and solve the problem is going to force things into areas that are going to be less transparent for buyers. So it's very frustrating. We put forward what we thought was a very reasonable and workable solution. Was the vendor had to confirm 3 days out from the auction that their reserve existed within the 10% advertised range. So if it had been advertised at 9 to 9.90, 3 days out, yes, the vendor says to the agent, I can confirm for you it exists within that range. If it's changed and now they want $1,050,000, then the advertised range would also have to change to represent that, i.e. $1 million to 1.1. Unfortunately, by saying it needs to be declared 7 days prior to auction, it essentially only gives the vendor and the agent 2 weeks to test the market. The reality of an auction campaign is it's dynamic right up to auction day. And so this is an overreach of the government to try and control what vendors must do. And it's really important to note, Craig, this is not a requirement of agents, even though they're trying to put the responsibility of agents onto the transaction. Vendors determine their reserve price. Vendors should have the right to manage that right up to and during the auction should they want to. So long as there's that definitive range that is confirmed to the market, we think that's fair. And unfortunately, the way the amendment bill has been worded, there's so much grey area and confusion around what this will actually mean. And so we believe what will happen is that people will move away from auctions being the most transparent method of sale, into other areas that are less transparent and essentially not as good for buyers.
We are talking to Toby this morning. When we come back, we're going to look at owners' corporation reforms. We'll do that after this.
Listen to expert perspectives with exclusive real estate conversations and supercharge your knowledge base with us. Eager to expand your property expertise? Enhance your real estate know-how with us.
Now, off the back of talking about some of these areas that are going to join the $1 million suburb list, I thought it would be interesting just to run through a couple of them. One of them is Baringa, which is one of the Sunshine Coast's growth suburbs to watch out for at the moment with strong population growth. Median house price approximately $950K, median rental around $720, and median unit price, that is hovering around $725,000, and that has got an annual growth of 3%. And Brighton Les Sands, this is a vibrant coastal suburb located in the southern Sydney area and sits on the western shore of Botany Bay, about 13 k's southwest of Sydney, and just a short drive from the Sydney airport. Median house prices here approximately $2.1 million. And the median unit price $915,000. So there are a couple of those suburbs that are about to shortly enter. This is the prediction for the $1 million price tag. It is a Real Estate Friday. Toby is here. Time to have a look at the Owners Corporation reforms. The Vic government has announced changes following an Owners Corporation review, and the REIV involved in providing feedback. You guys are talking about the changes, which include areas such as hardship payment plans, dispute processes and governance. With more Australians living in apartments now, are owners' corporations becoming a bigger issue for property buyers to understand? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. We are seeing an increased number of people living in apartments, not only in inner city areas, but there's significant growth in apartment living even in the middle ring and even regional Victoria. So it is something that we're working closely with the government to ensure we have the right legislative framework to be able to support owners of apartments, whether they rent that out, put it into the rental pool or own it and live in it. So making sure we have the right owners corp legislative framework is really important, as that's a growing part of the property sector in terms of how people choosing to live.
You've also highlighted that Victoria's housing market does continue to lag behind several other states with affordability pressures and taxation settings, which is a talking point on its own. Are policy changes helping, do you think, solve housing affordability, or are they making it harder to attract investment required, especially for rental supply?
Yeah, well, certainly on a rental supply basis, unfortunately, we have an environment here in Victoria where not only is there a lack of incentive for landlords to continue to provide their stock to the rental market, we've actually got an environment where it's a disincentive. The capital values of Melbourne are lower compared to some of the other main capital cities around country, including Sydney, Brisbane, Perth. So whilst we may look attractive from a capital or affordability point of view for investors, the challenge is the tax regime to be able to hold on to those properties and to want to continue to invest in Melbourne is just not there. And that's actually borne out in our research that shows unless things actually change in terms of the tax and regulatory settings for landlords delivering properties to the rental market, our research shows that they're going to consider other options or move into state. We've got a supply issue. We need to encourage private landlords to want to invest and hold and deliver the properties into Victoria that we need in the rental market, because otherwise the renters that unfortunately suffer, price becomes higher, choice becomes less.
And another one is proposed changes to Section 27 and Section 32. I'm just thinking there's all these changes. People are probably trying to keep pace of it all. But the key concerns include replacing the current Section 27 deposit release process with a contractual system, potentially reducing certainty and protections. Do you think these changes will make property sales more complicated?
Absolutely. And the reality is we're trying to understand what the rationale is for this proposed change. At the moment, the Section 27, which is the deposit release, essentially can deliver two things. It can deliver the availability of funds for a homeowner who has just sold their property to then be able to make their next purchase. It's after the contract has been completed and it's an agreement between the buyer and the seller. It's fit for purpose. It actually delivers what it needs to. Part of that Section 27 release is that the agent who has completed all of their work and then has no impact on when the property goes to settlement can get access to their commission payment because they've done all their work, and that seems fair. By removing Section 27 entirely, it means that agents who have completed their work can no longer get access to their commission in a time frame that is reasonable, particularly if there's a long settlement. But the other factor there is that, is this going to increase the cost for homeowners who have sold their property to then make their next purchase? Does that mean bridging finance? Does that make it more difficult in the context of an already challenging market for homeowners to be able to make their next purchase? The Section 27 is a contractual framework is an agreement framework that works extremely well right now to enable the buyer to agree to let their deposit monies be accessed by the vendor with terms around that. What they're trying to do now is push the concept of early release of deposit funds into the Section 32, which is right at the start of the process, and it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, there's a lot of these proposals around policy. It keeps you on your toes, I guess. I mean, it really does justify having you in a position where you're across all of this for the members.
Look, there's been, from a Residential Tenancies Act in the past 5 years, there's been over 150 changes that have come through. So the property managers in our industry are doing an amazing job trying to keep track of all the changes that need to be made and trying to, get the tenants to understand what their rights are and how they need to meet the requirements of the Residential Tenancies Act, but perhaps even more importantly, getting the landlords across all of their obligations. So the property managers do an amazing job. It's not an easy job. And we're here to try and help them with regard to compliance and making sure they meet those regulatory changes that the government has introduced.
Well, Toby, it is a Friday, so put your feet up this coming weekend. Thank you so much for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast and explaining all of that.
Thank you very much for your time, Craig. Much appreciated.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.